The forest was old, ancient, the kind of place where time itself seems to get lost among the towering trees and twisted roots. We went there seeking answers, drawn by stories of strange disappearances and unsettling whispers carried on the wind. It was deep into the night, June 9th, 2025, and a thick, heavy fog had rolled in, clinging to everything like a damp shroud. You couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. Each step we took was a blind leap of faith into the unknown, the ground soft with centuries of fallen leaves that muffled our sound. The air was cold, biting at our exposed skin, and carried the scent of damp earth and decay. It was a primal darkness, a complete sensory deprivation that put all of us on high alert. We were miles from any road, any sign of civilization. The silence was overwhelming, a pressure against our eardrums. But it wasn't empty. It was a living silence, filled with the weight of something unseen. The trees stood like skeletal sentinels, their massive trunks disappearing into the dense fog above. Their branches, gnarled and bare, looked like bony fingers reaching down to grab us. Every gust of wind sounded like a sigh, a mournful breath exhaled from the very lungs of the woods. You could feel the history here, the energy of every event that had ever unfolded beneath this dark canopy. We were intruders in a sacred, forgotten place, a place that did not want us there. Our investigation began slowly. We set up our equipment, our flashlights cutting feeble beams into the oppressive gloom. The fog played tricks on our eyes, making the familiar look alien. A simple rock could look like a crouching figure. A fallen branch could resemble a twisted limb. There was a palpable feeling of being watched, a static charge in the air that made the hair on our arms stand up. We spoke in hushed tones, our voices swallowed by the immense quiet. This wasn't just a forest. It was a location with a powerful residual energy, an intelligence. It knew we were there and it was waiting. We had heard the legends. Locals spoke of it as a place where the veil between worlds is thin, a place where things cross over. They warned us not to enter after sundown, telling stories of people who went in and never came out, or who returned changed, their eyes holding a permanent look of terror. Of course, that's exactly why we were there. We wanted to capture evidence of the paranormal, to understand what lurked in these woods. But as the fog grew thicker and the temperature dropped, a primal fear began to creep into our hearts. We were completely isolated, at the mercy of whatever called this suffocating darkness home. The investigation was on. Suddenly, it happened. Without warning, a light appeared. It wasn't a flashlight. It wasn't a campfire. It was something impossible. A brilliant, pulsating orb of white and blue light ignited deep within the trees, maybe 100 yards away. It was blindingly intense, yet it didn't illuminate the forest in a normal way. Instead, it cast long, distorted shadows that seemed to dance and writhe with a life of their own. The light was silent, a stark contrast to the chaos it created in our minds. It pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm, like a monstrous heartbeat bathing the suffocating fog in an ethereal, chilling glow. We were frozen, our cameras pointed toward the impossible phenomenon. The light was unnatural, it defied all logic, it was pure, concentrated energy, and it felt ancient and intelligent. As it brightened, the shadows of the trees became razor-sharp, stretching and twisting into grotesque shapes. They looked like long skeletal figures, their claw-like branches reaching for us across the forest floor. The light seemed to bend around the trunks, creating a bizarre visual effect that disoriented us completely. My own shadow grew into a towering, monstrous version of myself. We were standing in a world that had been turned upside down, where light itself was the source of terror. This was not of our world. Our reactions were immediate and visceral. I could see the fear in my team's eyes, wide and reflecting the strange, pulsing glow. Hands trembled as they tried to keep their cameras steady. No one spoke. The shock was too great. What could create a light like this? So powerful, so silent, so utterly alien. It was a raw display of power that made us feel small and insignificant. We were witnessing something that humans were never meant to see. The temperature around us plummeted even further, and an inexplicable feeling of dread washed over us, cold and heavy. We were face to face with the unknown. The light pulsed again, stronger this time. The shadows leaped and contorted violently, as if they were alive and in agony. The fog swirled, illuminated by the otherworldly radiance, creating a vortex of mist and light. It felt like we were standing on the edge of another dimension, and that light was the doorway. We had come seeking evidence of the paranormal, and now we were staring it right in the face. But this was more than a ghost. This was something else entirely, something bigger, something that didn't follow the rules of our reality, and we were trapped in its presence. Then came the sounds. A low, deep rumbling began to vibrate through the ground, a bass frequency so powerful we could feel it in our bones. It wasn't an earthquake or thunder. This sound was mechanical, yet organic. It seemed to emanate from the light itself, a resonant hum that grew in intensity with every pulse. It was a sound that felt wrong, unnatural, and it filled our heads with a disorienting pressure. My ears popped. The vibration was so intense that the leaves on the ground around us began to tremble. It was the sound of immense power being unleashed. Over the deep rumbling, a new sound emerged. A high-pitched electronic humming like 1,000 insects buzzing in perfect, terrifying harmony. It was a sound that scraped at the edges of our hearing, almost painful in its frequency. It seemed to sync with the pulsing of the light, rising and falling in a hypnotic, unsettling rhythm. And woven within this electronic hum, we began to hear voices, faint, distant whispers that seemed to echo from every direction at once. They were not human. The language was guttural, filled with clicks and strange inflections, a chilling chorus that spoke of things our minds could not comprehend. Panic was setting in. I looked at my team. Their faces were pale, their eyes darting into the darkness beyond the light, searching for the source of the whispers. We were surrounded. The voices seemed to be getting closer, swirling around us in the fog. Were they real? Or was the light and its frequency playing tricks on our minds? At that moment, it didn't matter. The fear was real. I saw flashes of movement at the edge of my vision. Dark, fleeting shapes that vanished the moment I tried to focus on them. Were these the entities tied to the light? Were they the ones whispering from the shadows? As we stood there, paralyzed by the sensory assault, I noticed something on the trunk of a nearby tree. Carved into the bark were symbols. They were not modern graffiti or ancient petroglyphs. They were complex geometric patterns that seemed to glow faintly in the strange light. They were identical to symbols we had seen in other haunted locations, thousands of miles away. It was an impossible connection, a sign that whatever we were dealing with was not confined to this one forest. It was something far more widespread, far more intelligent, and far more terrifying than we could have ever imagined. The entire event lasted for what felt like an eternity, but in reality, it was probably no more than 5 minutes. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the light imploded. It didn't fade away. It collapsed in on itself in a silent, violent flash, plunging the forest back into absolute suffocating darkness. The rumbling stopped, the humming ceased, the whispers vanished. We were left standing in a silence that was now heavier and more menacing than before. Our ears were ringing, our eyes struggling to adjust to the blackness. The only light was from our own flashlights, which now seemed pitifully weak. We stood there for a long time, too shaken to move or speak. The air was still thick with an unseen energy, a residual charge left behind by the impossible event. The fear hadn't left with the light. It had seeped into us, a permanent stain on our souls. We had captured it all on camera, the light, the shadows, the symbols. We had recorded the sounds. We had the evidence. But evidence of what? There was no rational explanation for what we had witnessed. It was not a weather phenomenon. It was not man-made. It was something else. Something that defies our understanding of the universe. Eventually, we packed up our gear, our hands still shaking, and began the long walk out of the woods. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves sent a jolt of adrenaline through us. We kept looking back over our shoulders, half expecting to see the light ignite once more, or to see the figures from the shadows emerge from the trees. The forest felt different now. It was no longer just a place of legends. It was a place of proven, terrifying reality. We had entered as investigators, but we left as witnesses to something profound and deeply unsettling. What happened in that forest on June 9th, 2025? To this day, we have no answers, only more questions. Was it a portal to another dimension? An encounter with an extraterrestrial or interdimensional being? Or was it something older, a primal force that has existed in these dark places since the dawn of time? We may never know. But we know what we saw. We know what we felt. We went looking for the unknown, and we found it. The evidence we captured proves that we are not alone. And sometimes the most terrifying truths are the ones that remain unexplained, leaving us to wonder what else is hiding, unseen in the dark.